Alright guys, I've seen a lot of praise for Frozen recently, and I think this is obviously justified, but I just want to show some of the aspects where I think he is still a bit sort of raw and still needs to improve a little bit if he does want to reach that tier 1. Obviously this will come with time, I just wanted to show some of the sort of caveats to his game right now, and that he does still have areas he needs to improve on. So, some context for this game. Out of the past 30 games Frozen has played, this is one of the 3 games where he actually has a less than 1 rating on HLTV. So clearly this doesn't happen all that often, but I still think it's really relevant to discuss. In terms of specifics, we're in the semi-finals of an online tournament where there's not too much prize money, but still, of course, you're going to want to be winning. I think it was $1,000 for first place. Ixtatus had already won the first map back on Overpass 16-5, and that was their opponent's map pick. So clearly they would have been confident heading into this second map, but then on their own map choice of Cash, it was actually quite close at 16-12, and I think Frozen's lack of performance was part of the reason for that. So yeah, just wanted to show that quickly. Alright, so Ixtatus won the pistol round, and Frozen now buys up a Mac 10. A little bit risky, but his teammates are buying AK, so it's fine. And instantly Frozen goes towards B. This seems to be where he consistently plays on the T side, even if he's by himself, and I think this was the real sort of crux of the issues. Flash came in, Frozen struggles a bit with the fight, and here he just needs to back off. I don't know why he's taking this fight. His teammate does just about get there for the trade, but again, it's just kind of unnecessary to take that fight there with a Mac 10 when you're somewhat isolated. Skipping ahead to the next round, WASD did actually win that force, so now Ixtatus are going to have to be buying up just pistols themselves. So heading into this round, he leans towards B again. Tech9s do some damage. Frozen does get that 1 entry, and now they should just try and get towards the site and get the bomb plant. Nade comes through and denies that, so now Frozen has to recover and try and get towards the site. He gets taken out by a flash. Again, this round is fine. Ixtatus unfortunately go on to lose that round, and I don't think they even get a bomb plant, so it is just pistols again here. Shouldn't be too much to talk about in this round number 19. Looks like they're going to try and rush B. Helix already gets a couple of kills. Frozen might as well just swing out at this point and try and get the trade. You can see that kind of hesitation, a little unnecessary, but again, it's pretty much a full eco. I'm not going to rap on him too much for that. I think it's the gun rounds coming into the future that really start to show some of the issues. Round number 20, first gun round, Frozen buys up the AK, he buys up a smoke, he buys up a HE grenade, and again he goes towards B main all by himself. And as I've kind of been implying earlier, I'm not sure how big of a fan I am of this. You see the nades coming in, the CTs are going to push towards him, he's all alone, and he ends up going down early to an MP9. If he's going to play B alone, I'd prefer him to just play back and sit passively, but I feel like Frozen, because he's just, in general, able to sort of out-aim opponents. I kind of feel like this is a bit of his game where he kind of lacks a little bit, you know. Oftentimes you will see him just want to go aggressive early because he's so confident he can win those initial fights. They lose the round, again they're down to pistols, and it's starting to get a bit out of control now, but they do decide to at least buy up decently. Again, Frozen goes towards B. This time he does have support from one of his teammates, which is good to see. Also a flashbang in his hands, so he throws that out. Running through the smoke is okay, but again, the weird thing with Ixtatus is they're kind of all spread out across the map, which I don't really like when you've only got pistols. It's always going to be difficult to sort of get any entries this way. Either way, that's not something we can blame Frozen for too much. He's just not looking at opponents there. I don't think there's too much we can gather from that. Round number 22, and WASD is starting to get a decent lead here, so this is a really critical round for Ixtatus. Finally, Frozen doesn't go towards B at the start of the round. Instead, they look to line up a mid play. Decent use of utility, but already the trades are going to come through towards highway. That's fine. Frozen gets blinded, has to fall back to safety. Now he tries to push up towards highway. The A player's coming in, so again, this is okay. There's already a smoke towards truck as well, so he gets his way through. Does clear truck, which is good. Nice kill there, and they've basically already won the round at this point. Maybe a bit unnecessary to take that fight, but at the same time, there was another player there, so I think that's pretty well played by Frozen. But again, that's because I think his team kind of called a strategy there. They actually went towards that mid play early on. Now it looks like Ixtatus might be leaning back towards a more sort of default setup. And again, Frozen goes back towards B, where he's been struggling a bit so far. Molotov comes through, Flash comes out, and that does counter the aggression quite well. And finally, Frozen does adapt with the spray through. A little bit lucky, but he's seen them be aggressive at B so far, so I do think that's well played by him. He got the timing right. The flash was pretty good. He played it pretty well. At the same time, if they pushed straight through, he could have got caught maybe with a flash in his hand, but I think it would have been okay. His teammate was there to support him, so yeah, I think that's decently done. Flashes himself towards B. A little bit of an unnecessary push again. There's not really too much support from his teammates yet for the trade. He goes down to Gaborik, and that really could have allowed WASD to get a chance back into that round. Ecstatus go on to win the round. WASD still have a bye, as do Ecstatus, so it's a pretty important gun round at this point. Again, using nades early towards B. Counter smoke comes through. Tries to go for the spray through himself, and look at this. The boost is coming in. Somehow Frozen still doesn't spot it. Again, he's just continually going back towards B, and most of the time it really feels like he's just throwing away his life all by himself. I feel like Frozen here needs to just kind of call for some support if he's consistently dying like this at B. If there's a player to trade there, then they can reasonably easily get it down to a 4v4, but it kind of feels like Frozen just believes that he's able to out-aim these players. That's kind of what I feel when I'm watching this. Ecstatus do go on to win the round from the 4v5, so we're back to a 12-12 scoreline. WASD still have decent money, so they will force up into the round. Finally, again, Frozen looks not to be going towards B early on, but again, I think this isn't his own decision. It seems more like his teammates have called that they want to go for some sort of A execute into the round. And I really want, when they're holding into that default, either for Frozen to call for a teammate to come help him and try to adapt, or to hold things more passively, and I think that's been the real issue so far. He runs in first, wins that fight well. Does kind of let his teammate die a little bit there. And when he's so low on health, I think I prefer Frozen to just push out there and gain some information. But the trades still work out in Ecstatus' favour, so it works out decently well. Frozen does get the AK, drops over towards him, and already he's looking towards B. This round, WASD are going to just go for pistols, and Ecstatus should be quite aware of that. And you can see Frozen does finally start to adapt to this. He's going to jump up here and watch the B aggression very passively. The thing is, this kind of feels like a little bit late. You know, we've already seen quite a few times Frozen go down to that early B aggression and nearly cost his team. He doesn't even actually stick to the position here. He goes and switches up the angle, which was a little bit risky, but it works out. He wins that first fight against Felix, gets that initial entry, and that's basically his job done now. I don't think he really needs to go for any further aggression, especially when he's by himself. Flashes himself in. Again, right now he's solo. I guess there's only one player left, so it's not too important. And there is now a player coming in towards vents, so it's okay, but I just don't like to see Frozen push out by himself in these unnecessary positions. You know, if he loses his gun here, it's just unnecessary. You know, that should just be sticking together. And you see Bitcher ends up taking him down. There's no chance for a trade, and now Bitcher's going to get an AK off the back of that. Bitcher doesn't get to save the AK in the end, but it just gives the potential there for him to maybe get some more kills, and there's just no need for it. By the way, round number 27, WASD switch it up, double AWP setup on their side of things, and what a surprise, Frozen goes back towards B. I don't mind Frozen playing one spot, but it's just kind of the way he's playing it so aggressively all by himself, which is really, you know, quite risky to me, and I know that he's good enough to win the fights a lot of the times, but still, like, it's just risky. And again, he just goes down towards B early on all by himself. It just feels like he's relying so much on his aim rather than game sense or anything like that. You know, if he was, you know, thinking, then I feel like he wouldn't peak like this sort of unnecessarily. You know, he'd at least have a teammate here to trade with him. That's the main thing. He just seems to be playing so individualistically that it seems to cost his team. And again, multiple times now, we've seen Ecstatus have to win from 4v5s when their star player has gone down early. And if you're in a different team, if you're against a tougher opponent, then there's a realistic chance you're going to be losing these sort of rounds where your superstar player gets taken out early on and the rest of the team has to play it out from a 4v5. Either way, again, the rest of Ecstatus win the round. So we are into round number 28. Ecstatus have a big lead. At this point, Ecstatus are just going to want to be closing this out right here in this round. Their opponents are on quite a low buy. Of course, this is an old demo, so we see the body wallbang early. And look, Frozen peeks out again. He goes down again. It's just so frustrating to watch. I mean, maybe he's not fully trying in this game, but still, like, he just continues to sort of throw his head against the wall at B and consistently give up that opening pick without switching anything up, without letting his teammates sort of try and help him out. You know, if he just gets a pop flash in there, he's winning that fight most of the time, especially if the opponent actually gets blinded, or even if the opponent just turns away. Frozen's good enough to tap off that head. It just kind of feels like to me he needs to learn to be a bit more cerebral of a player, you know what I mean? Like the game sense side of things is still something that needs to develop. The aim is undoubtedly there for the most part, but I feel like he needs a more experienced player to kind of educate him in terms of, you know, these sort of game sense style of things, because this can work for him against these lower tier teams. But if he actually wants to break out and sort of compete in a top tier team, he cannot be doing this round after round and just throwing away his life towards the B site. Either way, I think Ixtatus do manage to finish things off here, so that is the last round. But yeah, you kind of saw there, Frozen struggling on that T side. His aim is always going to mean, I think, that he's decent enough on the CT side. He's never going to have too many issues there. However, I think if a higher tier team picks him up, they're going to need to mainly focus on this T side play. All I'm saying is maybe Frozen would work well in a team where on the T side they kind of have a bit more structure, because you saw those rounds where they actually went together for a proper execute at the start there, Ecstatus. Frozen actually did really quite well. He did what he had to do on those A plays, on those mid plays, but when they kind of just spread out into a default, holding passively, Frozen just kind of died off early on in a lot of those initial fights. And, you know, that's something that I think if he goes to a higher tier team, maybe if they have a more structured T side, then he could really start to thrive if he can sort of understand his spots fully. And then you can give him a bit more sort of looseness and a bit more ability to go aggressive and take those aggressive fights when he's on the CT side. Again, I do still think that Frozen is incredibly individually skilled, and I think he's got a lot of strengths going for his game. But I just kind of wanted to show some areas where maybe he's a bit raw, he needs to develop a little bit more. And of course, he's only 14, he's got a lot of time to do this. But I just wanted to show that there's still areas where he needs to improve, because especially against tier 1 teams, he cannot be doing plays like that constantly. Either way, this is all just speculation. We'll have to see how Frozen does if he does get to a higher tier team in the future. So thank you guys for watching.